against you in a court of law.
Great. Used to be a lawyer, so that works.
Okay. Sucio Talk podcast. In the flesh, here, in a remote location in California, NorCal, with an artist, one of our favorites, right, in the restaurant industry as chefs. And I'm very excited to have her here, a listener of the show as well. I'm in her studio right now. This is the third podcast you've done in here?
Yeah.
Boom, and there she is, Erin Hupp. Erin Hupp, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's so nice to be here in your studio. Thank you for the toast that you just gave me.
Toast with
It's
peanut
amazing.
butter.
Yeah, exactly. Toast with peanut butter. You know, if she's a mom, so if a mom tells you you're having a sandwich, just say yes.
Yeah,
You know,
and you
that's
did
it.
that.
Exactly.
You did your job.
Yeah, exactly. So, how are you?
I'm doing great.
How are things? I see your dishes popping up everywhere. Is there any new projects that you're excited about?
Yeah. I have 2 new restaurants, Sons and Daughters, where I'm working with the new executive chef that sort of took the reins over. His name is Harrison. Pretty excited about that. And then also I'm working with Mark at Gozu. Those are the 2 upcoming ones.
Mark Liu.
No.
Or the chef.
The chef Mark, yeah.
Got you.
But
the pastry chef's been on the show.
I adore Mark Liu.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in line next to maybe help him out. But right now we're working on the Chawanmushi.
Got you. Yeah,
Dish,
I mean,
yeah.
he's a sweetheart, for sure.
Yeah.
I worked with him at Meadowwood.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so how long you been in the ceramics game?
I started learning how to throw on the pot. We call it throw on the pottery wheel when I was 17. So I've been doing it for over 20 years, maybe over 25.
Right.
And, you know, like right away when I first did it, I was hooked. I was like, oh, I want to do more and more and more of this. And I ended up spending, that was in high school. I spent a lot of my lunch hours senior year of high school in the art room.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Boom. We're good. So you sort of early on, you're like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
I loved it. And then when I went to college, when I went to undergrad, I joined a production studio. So think like Heath, right? Or Clay.
Right.
A big team. I operated something called a ram press. And it's like a huge industrial machine that has 2 molds, one coming down from the top and one coming up from the bottom. And it squeezes out a piece of pottery and then you finish it off on the wheel. I'm pretty sure that Heath uses some ram presses. And yeah, I did that for a couple of years. And then, you know, I absolutely loved doing it. I had a great community. I spent weekends throwing. I just didn't see the long game from that. And so I ended up going to law school and getting a master's in urban planning.
Yeah, just,
you know,
side hustle.
Just, you know, thought I'd do that other direction.
Love that. Okay. Well, you know, here on Sucio Talk, we take it all the way back. Where were you born?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheeseland.
Beerland. Had a really fortunate childhood. 2 loving parents that were teachers. Later, my dad went into insurance, but when I was really young, they were both teachers. And just like food was love in my family. And we gathered around food. My dad, very Wisconsin, my dad was a hunter. Come every November, we would have deer hanging in the garage that he shot. And then he would take it off to the butcher and we would have venison stew. He was a fisherman. We always had pickled northern in our fridge. So, yeah, it was just like, I feel like food was love at a really young age. My mom had an appetizer business. Actually,
Really?
well, she was a teacher, right? And she was like, you know, maybe during the summers or maybe permanently, I could start this appetizer business, which of the time, I mean, we're talking like early 1980s, right? It was revolutionary. So she wanted to, her catering business was all very fine, beautifully decorated appetizers. And this is like the time in Wisconsin where like mini pigs in a blanket is what you're going to get at a restaurant, like at a catering gig. But yeah, so she did that. It was called appetizers.
I like that.
I like
it's kind
it
of
too.
risque for the Midwest.
I know. I thought so. My mom's funny like that.
It's like,
I know.
what are
I'm
they
gonna,
doing over
I'm
there?
gonna appertize you.
Yeah. Did you hear what the Hupps are doing? Ridiculous.
So yeah, but yeah, really great. I'm trying to think what else to say about them. Just like really still hang out with them. Called them this morning. Oh, that's right. I was asking some questions because I couldn't remember exactly what the name of the appetizer business was. My
Right.
mom told me this morning. I was like, oh, I bet David's going to ask me about my childhood and I better get that name right. And then I was talking to my dad and he's like, well, if you talk about the fish that I caught, I want them to know that it was a 42-inch fish. You know, it's the one above the...
He's badass. Is what
Yeah,
trying to say.
he's like, it was a big fish. That's the kind of fish that I caught. That was what we did the barbecue with the muskie. It was huge.
Yeah, I love that. So avid outdoors things were going on.
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And
Got
yeah, it was just like a really, I guess I should have known when I was little. Honestly, one of my favorite things to do was mud pies. I loved playing in the backyard and getting dirty and playing with mud. Pretending it was food and pretending I was cooking, and it was all mud pies. So that's my childhood, is like dirty, loving, a lot of food, and outdoorsy stuff.
Right. Sounds like a great childhood. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
fucking
was really
awesome.
idyllic. It was awesome.
All right. So as you start growing, you're going to school. Any sports in school?
Yeah, let's see, I did gymnastics and track. But in the teenage years, what I really fell in love with was rock climbing. It was like just really avidly rock climbing. I joined the Y. There was a place out maybe an hour or two from my house called Devil's Lake. And you could just sort of top rope there and rock climb. So I was just like, how can I get to more rock climbing? That's all
Right.
I care about. I just want to throw pottery on the wheel and I want to rock climb. That was my teenage years. So much so that I actually started working really young. When I was 15, I started working, and my first job was at a Greek deli. The owners were like, they had like a wicked work ethic. They were really good influences, like for a first job. Like, we're gonna do
Yeah.
it. We're gonna do it right. And I remember they wouldn't let me use the cashier. I had to figure out all the change. The wife was like, I think you should be doing some schoolwork while you're working here. So you need to like mathematically figure out everybody's change. You can't use a calculator. You can't use the cashier. We're just going to do it. But they were pretty cool. And then I worked at a bread store after that, like a Great Harvest bread company,
Right.
which was really fun because I think like I was actually thinking about it this morning a little bit. Like, what did I love? I mean, it was like a dream job for me. I was so excited to work there. And it was all about process. You can like, you know, I mean, we're so used to seeing process now on social media and Instagram, but back then it was pretty wicked to like, it was so cool. Like they would just have you walk through all of the baking process to get to the front cashier. You saw the proving, you saw the kneading of the bread, you saw the ovens. Have you ever been to one of those?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. They're like really popular in the Midwest.
Right.
And I wanted to work at it so bad. I mean, I was like maybe 16 and they didn't hire high schoolers. So I remember looking at all the people that worked there and they were like in their early 20s and they had tattoos and they looked so cool and they were
Right.
older. And I was like, that's when I want to like knead the bread and I want to like, you know, do the process. But I started as a bagger and then a cashier. And,
Okay.
And that was really fun. That was probably my longest high school job.
How long?
Maybe like a year or two, which felt like a lot then, right?
Right.
Remember back then when like
Yeah.
romances that were 3 months long were like, I'm going to marry
A
this
lifetime?
person. Yes.
Well, I was thinking about this, and I feel like that's what parents say when they say you'll know when you get older.
Yes.
It almost feels like the thing that you learn as you get older is what time actually feels like.
Yes.
You know, because I remember being in school and looking at the clock for like forever and being like, when is this class
Oh my
over?
God,
When
forever.
are we leaving? And then you know, now it's like I need one more hour in the day, and then
Every
I can
day.
get everything done.
Oh my
right?
God. Right? I would
So-
just a couple more hours every
Yeah.
day to get everything I want to get done
Exactly.
completely.
So definitely people that time manage that's a skill, and I never understood why logistics was important until you start doing like large events, and you're like,
Yes.
oh yeah, like someone just needs to care about where we're gonna get water.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Just like the simplest stuff, right?
And that's the thing that you don't think of. Like, I use this example. When you go to the beach, the only thing you ever forget is the salt. Literally everything else. You got all the food,
Yeah,
you got
you
the
have
water,
everything.
whatever, chips, clothes, towels, the empty gallon to fill up with water so you don't get the sand in the car.
Yep.
Salt, no salt.
It's the salt, the
Yeah.
basic thing
and
that
then
you need.
You're literally like, well, there's the ocean. It's salty, right? It's like we didn't bring the salt. Guess we got to
How long-
brine our chicken in the ocean water.
How long does evaporation take?
Can you brine chicken in ocean water?
I have no idea.
There's some restaurant out there probably doing that right now.
Probably for a full coastal experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you're getting to the end of high school and your parents are teachers, are they like, you got to go to college?
Yeah, that was definitely instilled also in the neighborhood that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just it was sort of, you know how you go to schools and everybody is going to college. It was less of a question and more of like
Right.
a given. Yeah, I was working at the bread company. I started looking ahead a little bit and I was like, all right, there's only so much I can do at a bread company, even though these are like my family and we've been here and I love my job.
Mm-hmm.
I actually left and I started working at Applebee's.
Really?
Every time I say this to someone, I think of The Office. Do you remember that
Right.
movie with Jennifer Aniston, like collecting like horrible happy pins on
Oh,
her
Office
suspenders?
Space?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Office
yeah.
Space. I said The
Or
Office.
you
Office
had
Space.
the flare.
The flare.
It's like you only had
Yeah.
13 pieces of flare, the bare minimum.
I
She's
know.
like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh my
That's
god,
a great movie.
I love that movie so
A lot
much.
and I just made a Dumb and Dumber reference the other day, and everybody in the room was quiet because they were younger than me, and I'm like, am I getting to that age now where I'm like
I
referencing shit they don't
well,
know about?
I'm also getting to the age that I said the title of the movie incorrectly. So,
There you go, chef. Okay, I see you.
so I was like, I'm gonna work at Applebee's not because I love Applebee's
Right.
and I want to collect oodles of flair, but because waitressing is going to get me where I want. I want to have this job that I can take to college that I can do on the side and make money. And it did, because with my waitressing experience, I applied to work in national parks for a summer.
Really?
After my first year of college.
Okay.
And it was probably one of the most exciting things I've ever done with my life. I applied at Crater Lake, Yosemite, and Yellowstone National Park. And I was accepted at Yellowstone National Park, and I spent a summer out there doing hostessing is actually the position I got. I said I'd take anything. I'm like, just bring me out to just let me live in a national park for a
Yeah.
summer. And I did trail maintenance and hiked a whole lot, did a lot of backcountry camping, a lot of skinny dipping hot springs in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere, and it was amazing.
That's incredible.
You
Wow.
can't really live in the park unless you're a ranger or you're working,
Right.
food service.
Right.
And rangers,
So the food service people stay in the park.
oh yeah, like dormitories.
Oh.
Every morning I walked to my job on a little hiking path
Okay.
that bears sometimes frequented, and I had to wear bear bells when I was doing the early shift because I was walking alone for like a mile to my
No. Wow.
yeah.
I remember when I got to Wyoming to work in Cody as a personal chef. They showed up to the ranch and there's like, here's your gun and your bear spray. Don't die. It's like, what do you mean, don't die?
I
was like,
love
"Yeah."
Cody.
And exactly that.
I love Cody.
Yeah, Cody's cool. Different, but I do like that the bars still have their like nostalgia.
Yeah, there's
there.
a lot of nostalgia.
Yeah,
in-
there's a
in
lot of
Cody.
nostalgia there, and they really hold on to their heritage. And there's like the Cowboys is a real thing out there, and there's still people living that life.
Isn't it wild? It's
It's
just a
kinda crazy.
whole nother life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was stationed in the south end of Yellowstone National Park, so I spent most of my time in the Grand Tetons. Have you ever been there?
Mm-hmm.
I love the Grand Tetons. It's just like, I always tell I'm like, this is where I want my ashes spread on Jackson Lake.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like, just, there's something about the Tetons that are so majestic, and they're not, it's not quite as like overrun with tourists as Yellowstone National. I mean, Yellowstone National Park's amazing, but we just sort of frolicked in the backcountry at the Grand Tetons, and it was glorious.
Right. And did you, like, so you're having a great time.
Yeah.
Well, what makes you say, this is not for me, I'm leaving?
Well, it was just the summer. I had to go back to school, so I had to
but
go
you
back.
never thought, like,
Oh, I totally
maybe
thought.
when I come back.
In fact, I brought a guy home back to Wisconsin. I met a chef there.
Chefs,
And
those
I know those
rascals.
goddamn chefs, right?
Rascals.
And he was a few years older than me, so I think he had just graduated and wanted to go out and work the park. And we're like, you know what? We're going to break up. I'll go back to school. You'll stay here. And in winter in Yellowstone National Park, all the employees cross-country ski from their dorms to the restaurants.
Okay.
There's, like, the roads are down.
So they're just like,
I get these calls, and I'm like, how's it going? He's like, it's cold.
imagine running late.
I know.
Just fucking, you know, like, at that point, you're just trying to ski.
Yeah,
It's
you're just like, please let me catch you downhill.
Can I hitch on the truck? Actually, there's no roads, right? I bet you ever had a badass snow fight, like snowball fight?
Oh my God.
Like all out neighborhood?
That would be so much fun.
Yeah, we used to do that in Connecticut. Like
Oh,
it was
that
just
sounds
like
awesome.
the whole neighborhood. We basically, what we do is like the little lawn part in front of the yard where all the that's where you make your fort. And then you make like holes in it so you can like see the enemy, and then like, you know, so.
Oh, we used to do a lot of forts in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah, like snow days, you're just like, I'm
yeah.
just gonna like build a fort.
I'm sad that, I mean, look, I don't want everywhere to be the same, but it's something to be said about a snow day.
It is.
Fortunately, these kids out here in California, they don't know about that.
Oh, and then
But,
like I feel like
you know.
snow day means like what? We're not gonna sit there. We're gonna frolic and have fun.
Yeah.
My kids are just experiencing bad air days.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like what keeps a California
Like,
kid home?
Then you can't do shit.
Yeah, you're stuck in your house. So yeah,
I
not
hear that.
quite. Not quite as exciting.
So you're going back to school. You
Yeah.
you left that chef, you said.
I left the chef,
Hell
and
out
then
of my
guess
life.
what? He followed me.
He
quit his
followed
job.
you.
Yeah,
Wow. Erin.
I know. And he moved to Wisconsin, and we were engaged for a little bit, but he is not my husband, so that ended up not working out.
Okay.
But during that time, when your partner is in service, it's a lot easier to just be in service. So I kept on doing waitressing jobs. I started bartending. Oh my God, I bartended at this great blues club called Luther's Blues in Madison, Wisconsin. So I went to UW-Madison.
Right.
And I got to see Johnny Winter. I got to, like, you're just bartending and getting to see, like, just, like, really old, cool blues and jazz singers. That was really fun. And I did that all while I was also working at the studio that I was talking about. So all undergrad, I found a job in a pottery studio, and I started learning how to throw production pottery.
Okay.
And production pottery is different than what I do now. Your goal is to throw as similar of a shape over and over and over again as you can. You want it to look like carbon copies.
Right.
And I think I'm structuring my business a little bit in antithesis to what that was. So right now, Erin Hupp Ceramics is all about, I want you to look at something and say, clearly they belong together. They're a family, they're a collection, but I want you to notice it's handmade. I don't want it to be carbon copies.
Right.
So like back then, we would get paid per piece, and it would be all lined up. And if it wasn't the perfect height, either you or your boss, who is a nice man, it's just the way it is, would just like smash it and it's out, right?
Wow.
Which is fine. And it's just another, it's a different objective, right? It's like, can we make something that stacks perfectly? And there's something pleasing to the eye, but I just don't want to do that kind of work in what I'm doing right now.
Is there, obviously you have a lot of things that break all the time, right?
Yeah.
You're in the game of the things that break. Is it, what do you do with the stuff that breaks? Can you do stuff with it? Can you like break it all down again and get it back to?
I can if it isn't fired.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. In fact, behind you, there's like see that piece?
Yeah.
It S-cracked on the bottom, which means, the walls of the piece dried at a different rate than the bottom, which is a little bit thicker because it's part of a wall installation that I'm working on.
Okay.
I never fired that, so I can recycle it. It's great. But once it's fired, I just sort of trash them, to be honest. I mean, I think that's part of what makes ceramics so beautiful is like you just sort of have to let it go a little bit. I don't know, you're a chef. People
Right.
eat your art.
Mm-hmm.
It's ephemeral, right?
Yeah.
It's not around forever.
You're right.
And maybe there's some beauty in that, you know?
I think there definitely is the have to start fresh every day. But then it also plays like if you're not mentally strong enough, you don't see everything that you made around you or being used.
Oh, interesting, because it's gone
Yeah,
right
it's
away.
gone. Like they've eaten it. It's done, right? And so
Oh, that's interesting.
that's what I think the importance of the podcast is, because you're capturing a time and a place, and why you're important, right? Because it was a time and a place, and this time we thought about this dish, so we needed this vessel, and then we reached out to Erin. So you photographers, podcasters, and food media really is capturing a time and a place, whereas chefs are so like 50 miles an hour, like more than that, fucking 300 miles an hour. And then we're like, you know, trying to figure a bunch of things out at once. And I think sometimes when you have other people like not taking their time, but like working on such a like an art form and a craft, that like makes you stop and think. But like if you ask any chef, does he eat his own food? No, not at all. You know, in fact, I have cooked at home, cooked whole meals at home, and then been like, I'm not hungry, and then you don't eat it. That's like you making this beautiful pottery.
Wild.
Like, I don't want to use this plate.
I don't want to use it.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, here's maybe something like we can relate with is I barely have any ceramics in my. I mean, we eat off of my ceramics all the time.
Right.
But it is notorious where ceramicists have only their seconds.
Right.
Seconds meaning pieces that are just a little bit off, like for some reason.
Right.
Maybe not cracked, but not exactly what you wanted.
Right.
And I was like, fuck this. I need to make things that inspire me and that are, in my eyes, perfect and exactly how I wanted them to be. And so I'm starting to make myself a set of ceramics. It's just slow going because I'm always busy with the paid work.
Right.
But I was like, this is so silly. I was just talking to another potter the other day. I'm like, why do I only have seconds in my house that I'm using? She's like, yeah, I totally do too.
You're preserving that time and place for yourself, even though you don't like think about it that way.
Yeah.
But like you remember like, oh, I was making stuff for this restaurant and then this didn't happen. So, and I would say the difference between the arts mainly about like food and ceramics is one is conscious and one is subconscious, because you're obviously there at the restaurant eating the food. That's when you're conscious about it, but you don't get reminded of those flavors until you eat it again. And that could be 5 to 10 years later.
Oh, that's
and
wild.
That's that olfactory, you know, just sensation that we have that bring you back to childhood, sort of like ratatouille moment.
Yeah.
And that's what every chef is after, really. That's the goal. That's the magic dragon that we all want. You know, we all want to just take you back to childhood and do something to you that no other person has ever been able to do.
I love that movie, Ratatouille.
Yeah.
Do you think, okay, so if that's the case, do you think that, I think plateware has a role in that, right? Like I really love, so like I work with Californias and I love what Val did recently to one of my, I did a red clay charger with black clay swirled in, which is really, really hard to do because clays have different shrinkage rates, so they just want to pull apart and crack. But he paired it with vintage. And every time I'm out and I see the vintage, my grandma didn't have much. She had a set of Noritake, but I feel like that nostalgia, that Ratatouille, like remembrance, that olfactory thing is also visual in a way. And it's good for the vessel too, to sort of be like spark something in you,
right?
Something like some fond memory.
It's in your soul, like essentially. And it's crazy how our minds and our bodies are wired to sort of absorb things that we don't know we're absorbing. And like when you're having those horrible days, like you really just got to think like, it's not me, it's some outside force trying to like, you know, reawakening some things that maybe I haven't worked through.
Yes.
So I think that hard times are needed, because then they make the good times all
even
the
better.
You know?
Yeah, some things go really, really deep. You said something earlier that really hit me, because it's like one of the reasons, the core reasons that I do what I do. And you said something like, everything for chefs is so quick and so rapid fire and so ephemeral. Like the art is gone right away. And one of the reasons that I don't make carbon copies is I want people to slow down. I want people to think about it and be like, oh my God, actually, like my dining partner's plate's just a little bit different than mine. And I think you said something like maybe a snapshot of this menu at this moment. You know, when I collaborate with the chef, everything slows down a little bit. Like we just sort of like hold that menu and that item in a brainstorm for a while and like really ponder it and think about it.
Right.
Is that what you were like?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
like the slow down?
Exactly.
Okay.
A time and a place that brings you back to the planning and the execution of the thing rather than the thing.
Yes.
Because like if you're a Olympic gold medalist, like you treasure the moment that you won the gold medal.
Right.
But then you go back after some time and you're like, remember that time that I was running and I didn't think I could run, and then the coach said this and then I ran?
Yes.
That's the reason why I got the gold medal.
Yes.
You know? It's all the little things that build up to the thing.
Yes.
That I feel like we are running all the time, but having things like ceramics are sort of stopping it in its place and being like, oh, Erin Hupp. Like, there it is. Oh, this other person.
Yeah.
You know?
Or like even the knives that are handmade, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or like the glassware that catches your eye.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's all important. There's so many things.
I know people sometimes are like, well, what, you know, oh, it's this fine dining, you know, why is this all such a deal? Well, it's a deal because people go to fine dining restaurants to celebrate or to, I don't know, there's like a moment in time that is pretty special based on the price, right? Like for most of us, going out to dinner at one of these restaurants is like a pretty special moment. And you want those moments, like you were saying earlier, like the days are long, but the years are fast kind of thing. You want that moment to elongate, right? And so you want to like notice things, and you want to be reminded to slow the fuck down a little bit and like take in the food before you eat it. Look at the plate before you have someone take it away right away. Like I think that's a good reminder. Like let's just like enjoy. It's a story, right? It's a story, it's an experience, and just like slow down and enjoy every little bit of it.
Right. I mean, that's why I look at the phone. Like we always are like, oh, why are you on your phone? You know what I mean? But I think that moment that you stop to take a picture of the food, if you do it consciously, right? Because there's people that just and then put it away. They're not thinking about it.
Right.
But if you think about even the most monotonous activities, like I'm going to lay down and not do anything.
Yeah.
And if you allow yourself that 10 minutes to do that, you won't feel so bad about taking a break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
I feel like everybody is so like, if I'm sitting down, then I'm not doing enough. And I didn't learn that till after I left the kitchen.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was like, I was just running every day. I was waking up at 3 a.m, fish calls. Boom. Hey, no, you don't have my fish. But sometimes you got to drive to San Francisco and get fish and come back to Napa Valley and like fucking make it happen, you know? And when you're in that,
it's
I
just
feel like,
constant.
but you also don't take the time to treat everybody as well as you should. And it doesn't mean that you're treating them bad on purpose, but it definitely means that you're not conscious in your interactions with people, and it can then make you out to be this person that you're not not trying to be, but they're like, oh, that guy's an asshole. You know what I mean?
Because you're already like 5 steps ahead of the step that you're taking.
Yeah.
So anything other than that is just slowing you down. I remember that even from bartending.
Right.
You're just like on a busy night, you're just go. And before you know it, 7 hours happens.
Yeah. That's what personal chefing has done. It slowed me down.
Yeah. Tell me why. How? Like,
if I go into a supermarket, everybody's going at a pace. They're not in there running around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've learned to be more patient. Like,
yeah.
You know, there's a long line on the meat counter. No one knows that you have to feed 50 people in 2 hours and you're freaking out. Like, so you just have to like, this is it.
Just have
We're
to wait.
Waiting in line. You know, it's just like when you're in traffic to get somewhere late, or if you're going to be late, you know?
Yeah.
So I just think life is like a pinball machine. Like your mind is the ball. And then there's everything that you have to deal with all day, right? And then you're like, chink, 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 chink. You just get thrown around.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've played pinball before, right?
I love pinball.
There's that time where you just press the buttons and you just let the ball rest.
Yes.
Right? Before
you're
you
just
go
like,
on again,
okay.
right? Center yourself.
Yes.
And that's
it's
like,
holding there. Wait.
So sometimes I do that because I'm like, okay, press it, because just hold on a second, you know, because this is cool. or whatever it is.
Yeah, just have the
And,
moment.
you
And
know,
so maybe that's, fine dining a little bit. I think that's important. I feel like I like that imagery of the pinball, like having that moment, whatever it is that you just need to take a breath for.
Exactly.
And just be in the moment and enjoy it. For me, it's on the wheel.
Yeah.
The wheel is so present for me.
Right.
Sometimes I'm listening to an audiobook and I get in my job and I'm just like doing it. And then I'm like, no. And I take the earphones out and I put them to the side and I'm just on the wheel and I'm just going to be here.
Right.
It's so meditative. It swirls round and round. It has a hum because my wheel can handle a lot of clay. It has like this little hum, the motor. I don't know.
Where'd you get the wheel? How long have you had it?
This one is this is my third wheel, I think, and it's used from a friend.
Okay.
A relative, actually.
Do you have any other wheels that you keep around, or
I have a backup. I have my old one. My old one is not as quite as nice as this one.
Right.
My old one was a gift from my husband, and it was from, unfortunately, a potter who had a car accident and couldn't throw anymore. That was in San Francisco. This one's from a relative, and she does something totally different with clay. She does performative art.
Oh.
So she smashes, like more like fine arts degree kind of. She smashes porcelain, and she has a show upcoming in Fort Mason. She does all like body performative art, and then she was like, I just don't really need my wheel anymore. And I'm like, I will take that wheel.
Crazy. So what does she do after she smashes the pieces?
It's just, it lasts about maybe 5-10 minutes, and that is the art.
Right. So it's like Gallagher just smashing watermelons.
Oh, wow.
Ceramics.
I love that. I guess so.
It's like, you guys want to smash some food? Like, getting crazy. It's crazy.
See,
what is art?
We're
like,
older now, so we both got that. I knew who Gallagher was. You gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, I know.
He's old.
Everyone gets canceled now, so it's like you don't know which references you can say.
I know. I was trying to think. Did he get canceled?
Yeah, he did. He said some racist shit, I think, like a year ago or something.
Oh my God, I missed that.
Yeah, he's very political now. He's actually like on YouTube, like
making amends for what he said, or no?
He's out there with an agenda, being like, "This is the way America should be." He's like Ted Nugent,
Get
but
the
of
fuck
comedy.
out.
Yeah,
That's wild.
It's wild.
Okay.
But it's all good. To each his own.
Yep. That's what he's gonna do.
At the end of the day, like with the whole racism shit and everything that's going on, like most of these people are gonna die, like in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And that sucks to say that, but that's just the way the world is. I don't think back in the day when there was rape and pillage and like these things were going on that people even knew any different, because that was just the way that life was. And I think now that we know different is why we're like, hey, this is wrong, but it's all necessary. It was all necessary.
We're moving in a direction. There's a journey we're all on.
For sure. And it sucks to say that, because that, I think in itself, is a privileged thing to be able to say, right?
It is a really privileged
I didn't
thing.
fucking wake up in Ukraine today, right?
Yeah.
So there's that.
Right.
Like, but you can't just end your thing because somebody else is whatever, right? You can only control your world, right? And like the worst thing that happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So it's like, you may not live there, but the worst thing that happened to you is up there with the worst thing that happened to somebody else, right?
Yep.
And so it's all relative, and I think, we're all the same, even though we're different. And so just a little bit more compassion is really what we need. Because like I was telling you earlier with the they-them business, like I fuck up all the time. And the Jeff Davis thing where he was like, hey, I think we should erase that. I was like, leave that out there, man, because I need other men to hear men correcting themselves about the thing.
Yeah.
Because if we don't hear that, we won't fucking fix it. And that's a problem.
It is really interesting. We actually, so I have 3 kids, and we had the school had whoever wanted to join on Zoom, like a little informal, like, just educating, because we're the older generation, right? And I popped on because I was like, how are they going to handle this? Like, but it was all very educational, right? Like, this is, what we call like someone that, is born, and they just walked it through all the steps. And I was saying the one thing that I missed from it was, it's okay if you mess up. Like, don't just avoid it because you're afraid to mess up.
That's what's going to happen.
It's okay if you mess up, so long as you care and you're compassionate and you correct yourself. And I feel like, I was just telling my husband that, I'm like, everything was so beautiful and so great, but it was like so precise. And I think
it's labeling.
a lot.
Remember when we grew up? They're like, don't label shit.
Yeah.
Now they're like, label everything.
I never
And you're
thought
like,
about
what
that.
the fuck? Like, yeah, that's what era we grew up in. Don't label anybody. Everybody's the same. Cool.
Oh, that's right. It was like the whole like eggs, like you crack the egg open and it's same on the
Exactly.
inside was our like yeah, I remember
And now it's
that.
like, nope, nope.
Everybody,
And so
we're all gonna fuck up. Like just own it, right?
Yeah.
Just be like, hey, I really messed that up, and I really care that I messed that up because this is important. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, I don't want to say it's addiction, but it's a disease. Like certain things, like I view racism as a disease. Like it's something that you got infected with, and that's just the way your mind works. And I've talked to people that are severely racist, like I don't like you because of the color of your skin, but I think it's very interesting to talk to that person and ask them why.
Why?
And most of the time, it's like, well, that's what my dad said to do.
Right.
Or that's what my mom said to do. And if that person of color isn't willing to talk to that person and be like, well, here's my perspective,
Right.
they're never going to know your perspective. And then they're going to avoid it and become more hateful. And so it's on us to like kill them with kindness, baby.
Yeah.
Because I feel like going the other way and I'm like, whoa.
Don't avoid.
You know?
Like let's keep talking. Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's an interesting way to put it as it's a disease.
It really is a disease. I feel like no one knows any better. Like you were telling me, you know, it's like
no one,
even if the worst thing is done to you, that person is doing that to you or whatever because they have that in their subconscious. It's like in their DNA, you know, and we all, like, we talked about this before, like, how did the world grow? War, like people taking shit over, you know, and that's why we have the world as it is now, you know? So I wonder, like, if we did live in the idealistic world that we want to create, what would now look like? You know what I mean?
Oh, like what's the journey we have to go through to get there?
Take away racism, take away sexism, take away everything that's bad about this world and just do good. And then
what has to happen from here to there? What does the trajectory actually look like?
Yeah. So I'm like, what does the world look like in 500 years if we keep going the way we are now? You know, not pretty. I'm telling you, not
You
good.
don't think so? I think there is a lot of intergenerational trauma, which is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that, and I feel like we're all trying to handle that a little bit.
Yeah.
We're trying to work on it.
Some people are still avoiding, but there's those that are trying to work.
I feel like there's definitely a movement, and I feel like if we, and isn't it funny in life? Like if you just work on yourself, just focus inside. You don't have
That's all you need to do. Yeah.
You don't have to focus on everyone else. As long as we like collectively agree, we're all going to work on ourselves.
Right.
Maybe that's part of the trajectory too.
I just think it's
don't
so
know.
crazy that other cultures don't have depression. They don't have suicide like we do. And I'm like, what is that? Like, is it when you take away everything from someone, then they make up problems because there isn't any? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have
No, I don't know. What do you mean?
So, like, if you have no worry in the world, you're still going to have bad days. But what are the bad days going to be about?
Things that you're going to make up.
Exactly.
But I wonder also if, like, we set up unfair expectations about life in our society.
Yeah.
Like, everything's not going to, like what you just said, we're still going to have bad days. like, I don't know that we talk enough about that.
No, we don't.
Like, that's life.
Yeah.
That is the whole purpose. It is a 50-50 game. You're going to have 50% good days and 50% bad days. And if you're not having that, like that's great for you, but that's what's going to happen at some point. It's all going to even out.
You're
like,
probably a robot if you're having just
I know.
good days.
I
Like,
know.
Come on, man.
Maybe you're taking something for that. But
Exactly, right? I love it. Man, well, we got way off
we did.
topic,
We
but
did.
it's okay.
We did. I liked it, though. It was
We're in
nice.
I believe you have just left the chef. And
Yes.
you are.
Yes. What did I do when I left the chef?
Pottery. You're moving back from where you were. And what is your next move?
My next move is I take a backpack and I go travel for a year.
Okay. Where'd you go?
I lived in Australia for a little bit, and that Applebee's and National Park and bartending at the jazz club served me well because I got a waitress job on the beach, Manly Beach.
Dope.
Oh, it was so great.
Where'd you stay?
Well, funny, I started out in a hostel, and I did it with a girlfriend. Her name is Emily. She's still out there. She never came back.
Never came back.
Never came back. And
How
this
was
is-
that conversation where you're like, hey, I'm going to go. And she's like, nah, I'm good.
See you later.
Yeah, see ya. Like,
I'm not grabbing that flight with you. Can you tell my parents?
good day, mate. You know, like fucking.
Yeah, she's still out there. I'm finally gonna see her in a few months.
Oh, dope.
But yeah, so I got a waitressing job on the beach, Manly Beach.
Manly Beach.
Yeah, just across the harbor. So take the ferry from Sydney over. I know. Sort of cute, small beach community, a little bit smaller than the other beaches that are more famous. And I like that because I was only going to be there for,
Right.
6 to 8 months. I wasn't sure, but it wasn't a permanent move. And we stayed at hostels for a while. And I remember one day I was walking through the hostel and, bulletin boards, right? We're talking like 2002. And there was a note posted like, hey, are you sick of paying those hostel rates every night? Because I got a cheaper solution for you. And I'm like, oh, I am really, like, I'm barely making it here.
Right.
And it was a guy who had sort of like landlorded a house with a bunch of travelers in it. Like mattresses on floors kind of situation. Not gross, but just, it's not like an outfitted nice apartment.
Right.
Which is why it's cheaper than the hostel every night. And so Emily and I moved in there. There were a bunch of guys living there, and chivalry. They all moved into like the other bedroom together. And then Emily and I had our own bedroom, and we shared a bathroom, and like they were all surfers, which was really fun. So I learned how to surf, and it was so great.
Australian surfers?
I know.
Big fucking crazy
Kiwis,
people, dude.
some New Zealanders, British people. They're all travelers.
Yeah.
It's so normal for the Europeans just to take a year off. I remember people are like, you just graduated. Like, aren't you going to go to grad school or law school? And I'm like, no, that's when like the real shit happens. Like I'm going away for a year.
Yeah.
And I remember I got really nervous because, I was born and raised in Wisconsin. I guess I did the Yellowstone National Park thing, but we didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up to travel. We did like a lot of national park stuff. Remember teachers. I remember I looked at my dad and I'm like, is this a mistake? Should I be doing something more responsible? Like, I'm just going to go waitress in Sydney for a little bit. And my dad's like, we're not going anywhere. Just, what's the worst case that's going to happen? You just come home. Like, just go. Just go have fun. And so after 6 months of that, I was like, well, I'm just going to keep on going. So I lived in Thailand and Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. I did that whole circuit for a little bit. Hit up New Zealand for a little bit, dated a Kiwi in Dunedin, which is in the South Island. And then I ran out of money and I came home. But I just think that's so great, right? Like that's the time. Those Europeans have it right. That's the time, right? And then I was home and I had no money and I waitressed some more and I lived with my parents for a little bit and I sort of got my shit together and I applied to grad school and law school.
Okay. Are you throwing pottery this whole time?
Yeah, so I came back and my production studio is like, very happy to have you back. We have some work for you. Please sign up here. Because if you think about it, all that it takes to get to be at a production level thrower, it's a pretty niche job, right? And so like here I'm just like going to come back and I'm already trained. And they were just like, yeah, let's do this, and I did studio management stuff like recycling clay, mixing glazes. I taught classes for kids, older people. I had an autistic student. It was just like I just slid right back into that. Right. And then I studied for the GRE and got a position, and I started dating my husband.
How'd you meet him?
We had been friends. So I came back. I had seen all the world had to offer, and I was like, hey, you're way better than all that.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that's right.
I dated a lot of guys, and I sort of missed you.
Yeah. And then he was like, me too.
Yeah, sort of. Okay there. No, just kidding. A little Wisconsin in there.
It.
So we started dating, and then, I actually applied for an AmeriCorps position because I was like, I'm going to do something, like maybe I want to do more. And I got a position, I can't remember, was it in Maryland? And then they pulled the funding because Bush won the election. Right. And so, not really, but, like the funding got pulled eventually. It wasn't like Bush was like eventually. Right. And so that's what kept my husband and I together. So we always like joke around. We're like, all right, maybe one good thing came out of George Bush. Like, there was no funding. You didn't leave.
There you go.
And then I went to get a master's degree in regional and urban planning. I wanted to work on like land use and environmental issues. And that was out in North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And my husband followed me out there. And then we came to California after that. Oh, and I was in the planning program. And because I do things 120%, I was like, why would I get a master's when I could get a law degree and a master's? So I studied for the LSAT when I was in my master's program. Oh God, it was so great. They had you stay 1 year in North Carolina, and at the time they then gave you in-state tuition from there going forward. So for my master's degree and my law degree, I paid in-state North Carolina tuition 3 out of the 4 years. So I did like a 5-year program in 4 years, but it's no longer in effect, but it was great.
Oh, okay. So tell me this. You're busy as hell.
Yeah.
You're just starting this relationship. How long after did you know, like, okay, I'm going to marry this guy?
Yeah, I think pretty quickly because we had been friends. I'd known him since I was 19.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And now we're like fast forward to like 23 or 24 when we got married.
Okay.
Right. So I feel like once we made the decision and he's like, and I'm coming to North Carolina with you, I was like, this feels pretty serious.
Right.
And when I was out there, it's so funny because like when I was out there, I always would find a studio and throw. And actually I had a wheel out there. And then I would I would throw in with our storage unit. And then I'd bring the pots to the community studio to fire. So I became a lawyer. I did a lot of lawyer things. I worked at a firm. I slept under my desk trying to finish a brief on time. I did all the things that we do. Yeah. I know there's equivalents in the chef world.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this just isn't for me, right? Just isn't my thing. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to try one more time because I spent all this time and money and effort and investment in these 2 degrees. So then I started working with child welfare law, which was pretty gutting.
Something a little bit more passionate about.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the environment, I was looking at how can cities and localities help reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Right. And you're like, there's no way we can.
I did my master's thesis on it, and I was like, 2 or 3 years in, I'm like, we're all fucked, and we need to do something at a great larger
That's
scope.
Take much more than protest and look, we're already in it, bro.
Yeah, I know, right, right.
Throw all the pottery you can before this fucking dumpster fire falls off a hill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So then I was like, all right, what else do I care about? Well, I started having kids, and kids are pretty awesome. And so I learned a whole new kind of law. I learned child welfare law. I'm like a cat with 9 lives.
Right.
And so when you go into a whole new law, you have to learn the base law, and you have to take the continuing legal education. I did all of that. I took the seminars, and I learned child welfare law for a nonprofit, which was totally different than the firm. I always try to think what's the restaurant equivalent, but I went from the big firm sleeping under the desk to a 4 to 5 person all women nonprofit. It's totally different vibe. Just very caring and nurturing, and we're trying to do the best that we can. A whole lot of compassion, a whole lot of dedication, and it just a different kind of vibe. So I stayed there for 5 years. I have there was one. So a lot of times when people adopt foster children, we worked with kids that were a lot younger. There's a renaming ceremony, and so I actually have a child out there named with the middle name Erin because I helped that family for 2 years achieve permanency for the child.
No way.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, so it was so rewarding,
yeah.
And I also burnt out.
Right.
It was the things that we do to children that people do to children is pretty
fucked.
Yeah, I don't really share a lot of that. I didn't even do it, and I thought for the first 2 years I was I'm so compartmentalized. I got this. I was made for this job. Nothing's seeping in. It's all good. And then year 3 or 4, I was I need a therapist, and I need a therapist now because this is really horrible. And I need to be able to tell someone what's going on.
That's funny that you say that. I worked with a EMT, and she was saying that a lot of the times she would come home from work and then just break down and cry outside, and because you can't show your kids that you're broken down.
You can't.
So it's this very put it inside. And there's only so much of that, you know.
There's only
you're
so
a
much
vessel and you have a limit. So it's better to just deal with those things as they come, cry your tears, do what you got to do.
Don't stuff it down.
Yeah,
don't think you did a good job
'cause it'll come back
compartmentalizing.
later on
and worse.
Yeah.
Worse because you stuffed it down.
Exactly.
It like grew somehow. It like got it got like a whole little life of its own.
Like these little seeds. And
I know.
I learned about like all these little aches that you get in your body. Like, yeah, obviously you're tired and shit, but a lot of that stuff is just emotional kind of shit that's stored in your bones and your muscles. And
did you ever hear like, so we one of the things that we were really studying at that place is called ACEs, so Adverse Childhood Experience. And so you get a score. And the reason that you score, so like let's say your parents get divorced, you get a tally mark.
Right.
Let's say you go to bed hungry a lot. You know, there's like all these questions to try to like eke out the trauma that these children have received. And the reason that they created scores for this is that you report it to the pediatrician because it actually comes out in your body health, right? Like how much more likely are you to have heart disease when you get older? Like, so when you're saying like your body keeps all these little things and these little aches, like, yeah, like your body keeps the score of what your life has been like.
For sure.
And so our whole mission was just to minimize that for little kids. Like, what can we do? Because they already experienced the trauma coming into the system, right? Like a child doesn't get taken away from their parents lightly. Right? That child already experienced something pretty major. And then our nonprofit was like, how can we minimize the amount of trauma that the system itself creates for a kid? Because the system is the law and it took forever for like the proceedings to go. And so every day that goes by that a child doesn't know, like, am I going to be in this house for another day or am I going to be in this house for like 6 more months or another year? Right. So we worked on that kind of stuff.
So it's kind of a breeding ground for a bad adulthood.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, that was how can we minimize the trauma that these kids experience? And there was heartfelt moments too. I don't want to, the people that, not all of them, but a lot of the people that step in to help these children, it's like their life work, right? Whether it's their own relatives, like grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, or people that are foster parents. Yeah. But
a lot of that happens in the chef industry where most of those kids are going to work in restaurants because that's where you can be a misfit and still be loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we as chefs have that responsibility, even though we don't know it. But a lot of these people that are coming to work for us, like, not everyone has had a good past, right?
Yes.
So it's important to know your cooks and know your staff because then that way you can manage them in a more constructive way because you never know what somebody's been through and sometimes you can trigger those things and you're not going to know about it. You're their boss. Yeah. They're just going to go home and cry all night and then try to put the pieces back together and come in and like they still have the respect to be like, yes, chef, or like still listen to what you're saying, even though you literally mentally like fucked them up the night before, And it's crazy because I've seen a lot of like really harsh discipline happen in kitchens, and there's something about that, like when you're getting like screamed at, there's like this thing that happens, and like I've seen the eye twitch, I've seen like you've affected me mentally, and that never leaves you. Like you're like, I definitely like triggered that person to go somewhere where they didn't want to be, or they've been before and they didn't want to go. And that's usually what makes people lash out or get depressed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, compassion is honestly like what I've been 100%. Teaching and learning by myself, because I'm like, you can ask somebody else's opinion on something, but honestly, you really got to formulate your own.
Yep.
And somebody was telling me the other day, they're like, well, that's not the popular opinion. I'm like, look, there's 8 billion people, all right? I'm okay with 1 million listening to the podcast. Other than that, like, I'm not interested in pleasing everyone.
Yeah, you got to be true to yourself. Yeah. Right?
So, and I'm sure that happens with you with, like, the artistry that goes behind, somebody asks you to do a certain technique or style that's, like, rampant. You're like, nah, I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? Erin Hupp don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you have to be true to yourself, because otherwise, what are you putting out there if you're
Yeah.
not putting, like, I truly believe that we're here to use our creativity, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be like cooking or writing a book or whatever. And if you're not in that, you're not like fully present in that moment, your product's not good. Like that, sure, I'll copy, there was like the white speckled pottery that was really popular for a while.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I just can't do it. Like, it's just not me with the little manganese or the iron spots. And that's when I started working with a lot of black glazes. And because I was doing what I wanted and what inspired me, my work, my practice just flourished. So yeah,
You
gotta,
attracted
you do
like-minded
you.
people. Yeah, you do you. That's
do
basically after a while when you're a chef, you're like, oh wait, I'm good enough now. Like,
Yeah.
I can go cook my own food. Crazy,
do
right?
what I want to do.
You're such a humbled servant for so long. You have no idea when to finally be like, no. I am, right?
Right.
How many years did you throw before you're like, I'm a ceramist? You know what I mean?
And I'm also think it's hard when it begins as your hobby.
Right.
Right. So remember, I started when I was 17. And so when I started Erin Hupp Ceramics in 2017 really wholeheartedly, it took me another year or two to really like own that shit. Right. So people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just doing my hobby. And like, meanwhile, I'm back there like 40 hours a week, like slinging pots.
Like, I haven't seen my kids in 4 days.
Yeah. Cold calling Val Cantuans being like, so.
Yeah. Like, I got some plates over here.
Can
like,
I bring them to the
you?
restaurant? Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm nobody, but I really care about what I do.
Right.
But like, and then someone asks you and you're like, I'm just doing my hobby.
Yeah.
Like, no, own that.
So humbled.
It took me like a year or two to own that.
Yeah.
But then the minute, what's so crazy about words? Because words affect intentions, and intentions affect practice. Is the minute I owned that, shit blew up. It was no longer like mugs or like the should-haves went out the doors,
Right.
and it was like I unlocked something because I had not been creative with clay, which was like my passion and my love. It was always like, if I have time, I'll do it. When I devoted all that time to it, when you just sink into your passion. And I had been held back for 12 years before I was like, oh yeah, that thing that I wondered whether I should do at my like crossroads. And then I took the other path. And I did my master's and my law degree. And it's like rewinding back to that old version of yourself. Like throughout your life, there's all these versions of yourself, and like tapping back into that old version and being like, yeah, let's bring her back. Let's do this. And it was just like an explosion. And then I was like, I'm going to start saying it. I am doing this. I am a ceramicist. I work with restaurants. This is it. And that's when it took off, like that intention,
Did you, like when you moved back to California, was that your intention? Like Erin Hupp Ceramics were
No.
doing it?
So we moved. So when I moved, I've lived here for a while now. So we moved in 2007, I think. And so I did all my law work out here. I left undergrad my master's in my law. And then we came out here and I worked for the firm for 4 or 5 years. And that's when I did the child welfare law. And then in 2016, 2017 is when I started Erin Hupp Ceramics.
Okay. So who were your first sort of clients, restaurants that you worked with that put you on the map?
It was so funny. Californios is the one that put me on the map.
Okay.
And because Val took a chance with me, but I didn't get the idea until some woman reached out to me on Instagram and she's like, I'm a curator.
Right.
And I just want to do a night where like maybe you and 1 or 2 other artists are featured in the dinner. And I was like, oh, okay. This sounds really weird.
Right.
And because it's really weird and I've never done anything like
you're
it before.
A humble servant. You're like, me?
I'm like, me. I'm like, all right. And because it's really fucking weird, I'm going to say yes.
Right.
So like, why the hell not?
Exactly.
Like life is full of experiencing new things. So I show up and it was actually held at Onsen. Do you remember Onsen? It was that old bathhouse. Yeah. And so they had a PDR in the back and she had just booked it for the night. And it was me and like 2 other artists. But mostly it was a focus on me, and it was a bunch of people I didn't know at a dinner table, and it was an immersive experience. So we like drank out of my tumblers, and I had vases there. You know, like there was like a whole thing. Like my ceramics were featured in the restaurant PDR, and it was a blast. I talked to people I didn't know, and it was a really successful night. And I was walking out, and the owner stopped me, and she said, "Hey, did you notice how good your ceramics look in here?" I'm like, "Yeah, it really worked out well," and I'm still not getting it right.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
"Great event, see you later."
Yeah, right.
And then she's like, no, I want to hire you
Yeah.
to make ceramics for my restaurant. And I'm like, oh. And then
Trying to-
it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I'm like, that's the thing. That's what I want to do. Like
Right.
when you say that to me, that makes me immensely happy. And now I'm like suddenly writing in my notebook and all these ideas, right? So I started there. I made onsen like tea vessels and plates, and we did their like logo, and I did, it's just the same as I have my business right now, David, like, like meet with the chef, and it's all very intentional and specific to that restaurant. And it's like two artists collaborating. I really see chefs as like artists, right? And we're coming together and figuring it out. And I sort of shipped that. I got through it, and I was talking to my husband, and he's like, he's very supportive. And he was like, "All right, so what's the next restaurant?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, there needs to be another restaurant." That was really fun.
No business acumen whatsoever. You're like,
I know.
oh,
I really like that. And it was just that little nudge. And then after that, it's like, boom.
Right.
Like now I'm like, and he was like, and I was like, "I don't know who would have me." And he's like, no. Who do you want? And I'm like, well, at that time I was like, well, I would just want to go where we've loved to go. Like
Right.
any fine dining restaurant that I've actually wanted to go back to. And I had a short list of like 3 or 4 of them, Californios being one. And I reached out to Val. I just cold emailed him, and he didn't get back to me for a month. Val.
Love that.
And then when he did, though, I'm just teasing, he was really supportive. He's like, "Yeah, let's try this out." And so he was my guinea pig for like truly from the start, not doing like he hadn't, it's not like he saw my ceramics in his restaurant. And we brainstormed a bunch of pieces, and I just loved it. It was really fun.
That's amazing.
And then I can't get enough of it.
Right. So Californios, what was the next place?
God, that's really hard. I did some bowls for Robbie Wilson at Bird Dog.
Okay.
I did. I've done some things for Alex at Sorrel. I'm at Pasta Bar Austin and Pasta Bar LA. I feel like I'm missing somebody, obviously. Oh, Kim at Nightbird.
There you go.
Yeah,
Kim
that was
Walter,
really, and
badass.
I just pulled out, I just dropped off some new pieces for her that I'm
Right.
super excited about. They look like little UFOs, and I tried to find, I love MacGyvering something. Like I saw a picture of something in a magazine, and I don't even know what I saw, if it was like completely correct, but I'm like, I can't see the foot of that. It's like a hidden foot, if you can even imagine. It looks like it's just hovering there.
Right,
Like you can't see where it's actually connecting to the table. And so I just sat down on my wheel. This is like, I always leave some time to play, and Kim had not asked for this. And I was just like, I'm just going to play with this. And figured it out over Christmas. And I messaged her, and I'm like, check this out. And she's like, come into the restaurant.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
And so so she just has a set of those. So I've worked a lot. And then the other thing that I'm really fortunate of is like I've worked with really amazing chefs, and I have pretty much continued relationships with all of them. So
Right.
it's like, it's not that I'm going to take on a ton of restaurants every year, because
Right,
my
right,
existing ones keep ordering. Right now I'm the only one
Right.
doing it. That's the business model right now.
Okay. So let's, I want to break down a plate that you made for Pasta Bar.
For Pasta Bar, which
yeah,
one?
The red and black streaked one with the pasta.
The graffiti
yeah,
one?
Right.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
So that came about totally different than what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
So I really like working with Nate, and he was
He's an amazing dude.
yeah,
He's really cool.
Yeah, really cool
yeah.
guy. He actually is from the Midwest too. And so we got to a point, we did the normal thing, you trust the process, you trust each other, you get really into the groove. And then Nate was like, I think I want to do something different. Why don't you, what would you make if I just said, make me something? what would you do if I just said, this is going to be in LA and I'm going to put some pasta in it and the well has to be, you know, like so big.
Right.
Why don't you just make me something that you think like would be really cool?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, whoa, okay.
Right.
I was
Creative
like,
freedom?
yes, creative freedom.
Right.
So I sat down as I do and I thought it all through and I was like, well, I would make this really, I would get funkier because a lot of times, and I like being, this isn't to say I don't like it, but my pottery is like a canvas, right? Like it has to have some subtlety so that the food can really pop and shine.
Right.
I think the only other chef that sort of had me think outside the box like that was at Hilda and Jesse.
Okay.
Chef Christine. She was like, just more color. Just do it up.
That's awesome.
And I worked with an interior designer named Naz on that. And that was like, and maybe even, you know how like you said, seeds, right? Like maybe that was the first of it, right? That was the first real color play. And so then here Nate is, and I'm like, I just want to like, I used to do this. It's incredibly peaceful. So it's like almost like one stroke painting. So you get the brush loaded with a lot of glaze and you just have one go at it and you have to just carry through the line. So if you imagine.
It's like plating. When you put puree down, same
Yes.
thing. If you stop, you're not going to get it.
Yes.
So it's like a confidence
Yes.
like, that you don't know until you're doing it.
Yes. And isn't it
You
sort
know,
of like
it's
this
kinda crazy.
gorgeous,
Yeah.
peaceful process, right? So I don't know if you do this with puree, but I get my brush loaded right outside the plate and I'm watching. I'm like, how is it flowing? Right? Because like, let's say you have, do you do it with like a squeegee bottle sometimes?
Sometimes we do it with squeeze bottles, like lines. But I was more thinking of like a puree that you take on a spoon.
And a spoon.
And have to like make a precise like line on a plate with a spoon. Because
So
that
you
thing's
need
falling off of there. No matter like
That's what
gravity
I'm
is
saying.
going.
Gravity is
Yeah.
going. Like you
So,
need to
yeah.
know how it flows from the spoon. So I'm watching the paintbrush and I'm like, I want to do more of that. I haven't done it in ages. And you have to get it like your spoon, the rate of the flow just correct, right? Or else it's going to like peter out and it'll just be like little dots. It won't be like that nice, juicy flow. So I knew I wanted to do that. And so I took an old line that I had called Ink Splatter that was actually inspired by my tattoo artist because she like dropped some ink when we were tattooing. And I was like, ooh, that looks really good.
Cool.
She actually has a set of dishes that I made for her.
What's her name?
Liana DeFleur. She just has her own tattoo shop called With My Sister.
Okay.
It's in Oakland.
Does she own it with her sister?
Her sister-in-law, yeah, who's a with her.
Okay, the name is real.
And Veronica, her sister-in-law, is an amazing florist. So if you see flowers in my vases, Veronica does it because she's amazing.
Cool.
But anyways, so I wanted to go back to that, getting back to Nate, getting back to like creative flow, and I was like, how can I do this? And that's where I don't know, like the graffiti plate came up, and because Nate asked me to create it first. He had the challenge then of making a pasta that looked like it.
So the pasta was made after the plate was made.
Yeah.
That's fucking cool. Because
isn't that
usually
cool?
It's the food first,
it's
and then you're
always
like,
the
hey.
other way around.
Right.
And I built my business on the other way around. Like the chef has some food that they want to highlight.
Right.
But they need a specific vessel that's a specific size and color so that like, you know, it's a artist collaboration. There's like me being the canvas and then the food. And so then Nate, and I love it because then we're calling back and forth and he's like, oh, you had to use red. Red's really hard.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it all natural,
Yeah.
but I need it to be really bright, like your glaze, you know? So it's just really fun to like see. I mean, I hope if you would interview Nate on this, I hope that just like the chefs sort of push me to think outside of the box because there's always these questions, right? Because I'm not collaborating with another ceramicist. So the chefs will ask me things that like a ceramics person, we just don't do that would be the answer, right? And I love that because I'm like, instead of saying to them, we just don't do that. Chef, let me think about that.
Yeah, let's figure it out.
Sometimes that has led to like way more creativity than if I just did what we normally do in ceramics. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what the chefs, I think, have pushed the avenue of photography, ceramics, you know, just inherently because you need all those things to run the restaurant.
Yes.
Interior design.
Yes.
I mean, chairs. It's like And it's all because the chef is like, well, I don't want to be like everyone else.
I
And
want
then
to do something
you let him go wild, and he's like, hey, Erin, I've never met you before, but we got this pasta. You know what I mean? And you're like, what the fuck? Okay, yeah, let's do,
Let's do it. So then, yeah, Nate figured out the pasta, and I love it. It's like, it's really, did you see the pictures?
I did,
I mean, it's
yeah.
just like bright yellow and red and black, and it's
Beautiful.
it's like what ends?
Yeah.
What begins and what ends? There's like the pasta and the plate, and they're all together.
Right.
And
Well, sometimes you think that everything's been done.
yeah,
You know, especially with pasta.
right.
You know, and I'm sure that they get the same thing all the time. Like, okay, another pasta restaurant?
Okay,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
In a town where you got flour and water, you got Michael Tusk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what, you know, Chef Gresham, like, it's just wild.
Right.
To think, hey, balls on me, pasta restaurant. You know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, but then it's so well done because I've seen their portion sizing.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a fucking pasta tasting menu.
Yeah, because it's just one ravioli.
Exactly.
And it's not all just pasta either.
Yeah.
It's really good. I've been to both the LA and the Austin locations.
What would you say the biggest difference is?
Well, two different chefs, two different visions. Jeremy Stevens is down in Austin.
Right.
I feel like they're definitely cohesive in the sense that it's obviously the same restaurant, but
right,
like just a little bit. Jeremy comes from Louisiana, so he's got like a southern, which is perfect for
Right.
Austin, right? He's got like this little southern bit to it.
Somebody was calling Louisiana the Northern Caribbean. And I was like,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because there's so much Caribbean influence in the
French
food
and
over there.
yeah, Caribbean.
So it's like, wow, that's a different way to think about it. But you always think of, it's the South.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, no, it's not the South.
It's
really.
a little
You know,
different.
it's a diff-
well,
it's
the
different.
chef that I was engaged to for a little bit is from Louisiana.
Okay, gotcha.
A
So
chef.
you probably felt really passionate about
Oh
that.
my
Like,
God.
I'm not just
Yes.
turtle soup, you fucking assholes. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
It's
Sometimes
like
I
a
say
whole
the
other
things-
country down there in a
yeah,
way, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's
It
a
was
whole
wild.
different language. I mean,
It's
you know, if you hear
wild.
the slang from the street, you're like, I know slang, but
I don't know what
you're
that
saying.
is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Puerto Rican Spanish. You
Yeah.
know, versus Mexican Spanish. Like Mexican people will come up to me and be like, I don't know what you're saying. You know, and I was just speaking the same language, but it's different.
just so
it's diff-
different.
yeah.
That's
So it's like-
exactly how I felt when I
Yeah.
was down there.
So are you open to other chefs being like, hey, make this? Like,
Yeah.
or are you saying because you have such a, loyal clientele that you're basically picking and choosing?
I'm picking and choosing a little bit.
Right.
Only in the sense that at this point, it's just me. So there's like a cover number that works really well.
Right.
Because if I'm trying to stay really creative, I tell you, like any other normal human being, once we hit over like 50 of something, I'm now a machine, Let's get this like 80, 100. I'm like, whoo, and so I want to keep the numbers down so that I can really like be passionate about what I'm doing and
Right.
put my all into it. So like, I guess I'm trying to say I'm open, but there's like certain restaurants that just fit better with me. And I think it's like a lower cover restaurant. Probably something that, a chef that's really looking for something super art forward.
Right.
I like building relationships a lot. So I always check up on who I'm going to collaborate with. If I only have so much of a bandwidth, I want to make sure that I'm hanging with someone that's going to, I don't know, treat me right, but also even beyond that, like really into art and like just like where we like have a good rapport and we're going to like push each other. Every chef that I work with, they're just like, they're quality people and they have so much passion for what they do. And I always walk out of these meetings and I'm like, damn, like quick sketch it all out in my book. Like, like I go hard, I go really into things, I go really intense, and that's how chefs are,
It's really crazy, the mentality of it. It's like, I equate it to making a menu. When you make a menu, you don't really have any boundaries. You're just like, what do I want to cook? What's the season? What is the protein? What is the flavor? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so then when you kind of settle on an idea, then you bring it to, but then you're always challenging the idea.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You're always like challenging yourself. So I think the quality control on a daily basis eventually makes you sort of a better human being. Because every day you're very critical of yourself, which
that's so
like
interesting. I've
like
never heard of anyone explain it, and that
I mean, like think about like a mechanic. Like
Right.
he doesn't make the cars.
Right.
He just
Right.
fixes them. So it's like he's never gonna be like, you can be passionate about being a mechanic.
Right,
I'm not saying
totally.
you can't, but it's just a different and then it's like blue collar, but also white collar at the same time.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different things that you're using. And I really do think that, ceramics as an art, same thing. Because
I was just gonna say,
your shoulders are bent. You got back pains.
Everything that you just said rings so true. Like remember how dirty you got in my studio just now? Yeah. And I was like, I don't have heat in here. Do you still want to come over?
Whatever. Let's go.
Remember how I told you when I first started Erin Hupp Ceramics? I had a kiln under a deck, and I had shower curtains on.
Yeah. You made it happen.
I have to say I haven't told anyone that because at first I was a little bit like, oh no, I need to be like a business. But you know what? I am proud that I did that because it was raining and I was like propping up electrical cords so that they wouldn't get wet because I had no walls. I was just under a deck creating a studio. And maybe I was so like, oh, does that make me real or not? In those years where I was like, am I a real ceramicist or a hobby? I think it does. I think it actually, it makes you, I cared so much. I wanted to get this business, like it was my passion. I was going to do it behind shower curtains with rainwater and I was going to find a place. Yeah.
I think the make it happen mentality is you need it, for everything. You become resourceful.
Yeah.
And, it's the humbled just being like, let me figure this out with not all the tools.
Yeah. Because you don't need all of those.
I've been in all the bells and whistles kitchen. I got to say, I learned more sort of being a personal chef. That's the 20-minute timer.
It is. Oh my goodness.
All good.
Let's just.
We're hitting it.
I told you I talked a lot.
It's all good. We're good. We're at an hour and 15. A lot of knowledgeable gems were dropped, I think.
I hope so.
This podcast. And
did we not get into any? We have 5 more. We can do 5 more minutes. Is there
let's
anything
go. I
what
need
else
to ask
did we?
You,
Yeah.
What would you say to that young ceramicist starting out? Like, what is something that you dealt with that they don't know?
What? Oh my God, so much. But isn't it the whole point that you got to deal with it to know? Mm-hmm. I think for the first time I actually tried to do the math and then not try to do the math, but let's say at least 25 years that I've been doing this, it is hot. It's really hot. Ceramics is hot. There's a lot of community studios, and part of that gets me really excited because the ideas, the energy, and ceramics is such a good artist community. We're always really supportive of each other. Like if chefs contact me and I can't do the 100 quantity that they want, physically don't think I can. I don't use molds. I throw every single piece on the wheel one at a time. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard about Sarah Kirsten Ceramics? She's in Oakland and she has a full team studio, and you know what I mean? So I think what I would say to that burgeoning artist is there's a lot of ways that you can do clay. And I think don't just look at the obvious ways, like even what I'm doing, or a production potter, or I need that narrative that I need to get an MFA to do gallery work. Right. Find what you're really excited about. That's what I did. I was like, I have worked in the service industry. I care a lot. These people make sense to me. They inspire me. I love food, and then just go for it. I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways to use clay, and there's a lot of ways that we can be creative with the passions that we have. I mean, you're personal chefing now after doing. It's in any field, right?
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Just don't get locked into this.
No, you're not in a box. That's the thing. Everybody's trying to put you in a box. Do not let them put you in a box.
Yeah, everyone's out. They call me and they're like, "But wait, aren't you just going to do that quantity of 100, and you can just do molds, or you can just hire somebody?" And I'm like, "No, that's not quite the box."
Right. Yeah.
That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah. Again, everybody takes the most successful person and then equates you to them.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Well, what about this guy's got millions of people watching his podcast? Look what he does." I'm like, it's different.
I'm going to do something different because I want to do this thing that works for me.
And there's, again, 8 billion. I only need 1 million. I'm good.
Yes.
I don't need that many. I'm good. I'm not for everybody. There's different podcasts. There's different ceramicists. There's different chefs, different restaurants. And that is the beauty of this thing.
Right. And then you get to really, so if you picked the one that speaks to you, that shit's going to go down. You're going to do it right. You're going to do it with passion, and you're going to do it with creativity, as opposed to picking the one picking what you should pick. And I think that's so important. And I feel like I'm finally learning, like, it's just that grace and compassion we're talking about having with other people, have it with yourself too.
Yeah.
Just like really think about like how you're going to be the most creative person you can be.
Hell yeah. If I had a title for this, it would be Stop and Think. It's a fucking good
I know, we
podcast,
did it.
goddammit.
In case you missed it, the 4 other times we talked about it.
It's all good. They all end up having a theme somehow.
Isn't that wild? And nowhere, by the way, did we prepare this
No,
in any
not
way.
at all. Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the best part about this podcast. It's raw.
Oh, yeah.
There's no questionnaire.
Nope.
There's no even like, honestly, I think about this all the time. I'm like, you should have a template email if you're going to ask people to be on your podcast.
I don't think so.
The cold DM, I think I'll stick with it for now. You know what I mean?
It's working
like,
great.
Whatever, you know. But, you know, Sucio Talk Podcast, thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting because I know you listen and you are, you know, always shouting out my story and things like that. Quick note on Instagram because we need to address them. What would you like to say to Instagram? How can they fix the app so you can actually fucking? Because I've been doing reels, and when I did more content, I get less people.
I don't know what's going on with
opposite.
I know. I don't know what's going on with the algorithm, but here's what I want to say: is we're never going to be able to figure out the Instagram algorithm. They're always going to change it, and we're never going to have control as artists over it. So what I would want to say is less about Instagram and more about the people that we hold so dear that follow us, which is sign up for newsletters. We promise not to annoy. Keep supporting the artists that you love outside of the platform as well. Because, you know, inevitably when I have that artist friend where their Instagram account crashes and they have no way to reach, you know, it's like locked down and they can't reach their people. I've just been doing a hard push on like newsletter, like, hey, I'm literally going to like email you like 3 times a year. Right. But I would like to be able to tell you something.
What the hell's going on?
Outside of Instagram, if I need to.
Right. Exactly. And I think Instagram has become sort of a communication, you know? Yeah. Especially with chefs and in the industry. I mean, it's how I got a hold of you, you know?
Yeah, and it's how I get my business.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And I will always be on there. I just think it's important for us to think like, oh, maybe, you know.
A little bit more outside. That's why I did the podcast phone line.
I love that.
Here's a different place.
I think it's awesome.
You know, if anybody out there has any concerns, comments, questions, you want to shout a business out, whatever, you want to say hi to your grandma, hit it up.
Yes.
510-463-1145. It took me like 3 weeks to memorize it.
I was just going to say that was quick.
Yeah, before I was like, what the hell's the number? I'm like waiting for it to go by the screen. But
that was smooth.
Anyway, this is the studio here. I'm just going to turn this
do
away
it,
from
do
you
it.
And look at it back there so everybody
My
gets
little
a
baby
shot.
smooth studio. And this is me living the dream after that shower curtain and that deck situation. It's pretty sweet.
There you go.
Might look small to you, but it's pretty banging.
There you go. Well, how can people reach you if they want to do business with you?
Oh, and then after all that, I'm going to say go on Instagram.
There you go.
And then follow the link in my bio to sign up for my newsletter, please.
There you go. All right. Sucio Talk Podcast. Erin Hupp, ceramicist out here in Berkeley. Check out the show live every Monday. I'm actually going live tonight. We'll see you there. Thank you, Chef Erin Hupp.
This was awesome.
Fuck yeah. Sucio Talk Podcast. Peace.